Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with BJ Whitehead. Coach Whitehead is a strength conditioning, powerlifting, and defensive line coach for Dayton ISD. On top of his coaching duties, Whitehead is an accomplished powerlifter, creating a 2,000.7 total in raw competition. Coach Whitehead has a bachelor's of kinesiology from Stephen F. Austin. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Hey, how you doing? I appreciate you having me, man. Very honored, not worthy, but I really appreciate it.
Well, I had your name on a list. I think Monty Sparkman gave it to me, and I have a list on my desk, and I actually finally moved it over onto the computer, and I just try to work through all the names, and your name was on there. And then it so happened that on Instagram, I think you followed me after I did Cody Harvey's. So this worked out great, man. Thank you for coming on.
No, I really appreciate it, man.
Now, going through and researching all your stuff, kind of learning more about you, you're an accomplished powerlifter. You're throwing up some great totals. So you could have went raw. You could have went geared. What drove you into raw powerlifting?
Man, so it started, I gave you the short version earlier. Now I'll give you the long version. So it started, I've been coaching in Dayton here for a while. I've coached powerlifting. When I had one of our athletes, he went off to Texas Tech. We had a couple other coaches. We always worked out together. No serious training with goals in mind. Just wanted to lift and try to get big. So kid came back. He spent a year at Texas Tech, and he came back one summer, and he was like, "Hey, coach, I'm back. There's really not any gyms around Dayton." And so he was like, "Really don't have money for a membership and to drive to get one." He said, "You care if I work out at the school?" So I tell you what, I said, we get done with summer workouts about 11:30. I said, about 12:30, me and Coach Little, we get in there, we lift. You come in there and get in there with us. It was a win-win for us because he's a young kid, just a ball of energy. So he's like a walking pre-workout. So we were lifting for a while, and he was like, "Hey, coach, how about we do a meet?" I said, "Man, not me. No." I said, I don't think so. And he was like, "Why not?" I said, "Man, I don't want to wear all the gear that y'all wear." I said, "I don't want to go into gear." I said, "Main reason is just because it's uncomfortable. That's number one. I'm not very tough. Two, if I ever need to work out by myself, I don't want to have worry about somebody, wrapping my knees, helping me get my squat suit on, helping me put my bench shirt on, because it was the old school bench shirts back then, because I got started around 2010, I believe." So he's like, "Well, let's just go raw." And I'm like, "Man, let me research it a little bit. Don't really know a lot about raw right now. Everything I'd looked up, it was like the volume wasn't enough and this and that." And so then, I know we'll get into it later, but that's how I found Josh Bryant. So then we started lifting, and I told him, I said, "Look, I'm going to have to lift raw." I said, we'll go raw. And then I was going to do a meet in San Jose, the Fit Expo back in 2013, I believe. And try to wrap my knees. I wasn't having it. So I got a lot of respect for all the people that can go through wrapping their knees. One, I was not in shape enough to wrap my own knees. And two, I had some guys that came back from that were in college that were lifting for me and had lifted, and they were wrapping me, and they were taking a lot of frustration out on me. And it was just, my squats went down. So I asked Steve Dennison if I could just go complete raw. So after that, I never looked back, and I just stayed completely raw. And I'm so soft, I don't even get knee sleeves that are too tight anymore. So that's how I got into it. It was one of my former athletes came back and talked me into it. So we got Josh Bryant, started riding the workouts, and I've been with him ever since.
Yeah, I'll get into some Josh Bryant stuff as we go along. He was on the show, and man, just a great human, very professional. I enjoyed that podcast very much. And still to this day, if I email him with a question, he'll get right back with me.
Right away. You're quicker to get if you email him, you're quicker to get a reply than you are a text.
Yeah, I know he's busy.
I'm the opposite.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes I'll send emails. Sometimes I'll try to use Instagram. However I can get a hold of somebody without bugging them too bad. I'd went back through YouTube, and you and Josh had did a little bit of an interview. I mean, it could be like a podcast kind of setup, and it was really good. But you were going through some of the things you've kind of fought through, and some of the things that have improved. And one of them is deadlifts. So I wanted to get into deadlifts with you because it seems like there's almost a resurgence in the high school weight room of the deadlift.
I feel like I'm probably one of the few people that have let Josh down on the deadlift. But, he's got some great lifters just all the way across the board. But yeah, with the deadlift's one of our big lifts here in Dayton. And a lot of people ask me, they'll be like, hey, so you like deadlift's your favorite lift? I was like, well, actually not. Mine is actually squat. But we've had some kids that have just really taken to it and they've just taken off from it. And then they've created buy-in with the other athletes. And so it's just really just kind of help, just feed that fire. And, so our kids, they look to deadlift, like they want a deadlift here. And, we've got some good ones. We've had some really good deadlifters come through here. We've had a kid that's a 198. He's pulled 675 in competition. I've had a 242 pull 650. We've had a 198 that's pulled over 600. A 181 that's pulled 6+. I've had another kid 181 pulled 600 in the weight room. He plays linebacker. He's never done a powerlifting meet for us, but they take to it and they like it. I think mainly because like you can get to it and like it's just a true test of fortitude. Like what you put on the bar, and I'm going to get up with it.
Now, do you guys pull sumo or conventional or both?
During the powerlifting season, I have some that pull sumo. And a lot of them want to go the transition. A lot of them have tried to go sumo because they see certain kids pulling it and they pull a lot of weight. So they automatically think that sumo is easier because you pull it a shorter range motion. For all my athletes during season and during their sports season, we'll pull either conventional or we'll pull with a hex bar.
Okay. And where I was going with that was two things. Since you guys have started deadlifting big, have you seen an increase in your speed? But then second of all, in the sumo, have you seen better stoppers? Because when a kid stops hard, they are in a semi-sumo stance.
Yes. So the kid who just graduated last year, he played slot receiver, and he also played D-line for me. And he was a 600-plus puller. He pulled sumo. And speed was not his necessarily forte. He wasn't slow, but he wasn't just a burner. But he could cut on a dime and he could stop, and he had those attributes, yes. And so, yes, I do see a correlation because whenever we pull, and we don't always pull heavy, but we're going to pull and try to, like I'm still this reminder, how fast can we be strong? And so we're going to pull the bar with, violent intentions and try to pull. And then when you get up, you're locking your hips out and you're driving through. So that's going to directly correlate over to their speed, I feel.
I think I've noticed that, but you're always going to see a pattern in what you want to see a pattern in. So it's nice to ask other guys.
Yes. And I tell them, you may not be the fastest kid, but are you getting faster? And it's not always where we start because, everyone has a ceiling. We just got to get as close to that ceiling as we can get them there.
Well, and some of that I believe is if you create better stoppers, you create faster runners. So if your deadlift's good and you can handle those forces, now you can stop better. You theoretically, if you want to get down some neurological pathway, you should be able to get faster.
Exactly.
Now, as I've been tinkering with this and always trying to improve this deadlift, let me ask you this. It's something I think I've stumbled on, and I wouldn't have thought this a few years ago, but maybe I do now. Do we try to rush that lift too much and then it gets out of whack? Like, are we not sitting in it long enough to let that bar kind of float and pop and then drive it up? It's almost like maybe I'm rushing that lift. Is that something you've noticed?
Yes. I feel like, the kids, because they do want to lift violently. They do want to lift aggressively. They do want to try to get bar speed, but they've got to realize they've got to get in a better position. And I stole this quote, little cue from, I can't remember who it was. Excuse me. I apologize for not giving them credit, but, position over power. And so if you're not in the right position to start with, then you're going to get out of whack. And just kind of like I tell my defensive linemen, the first thing we're going to work on is stance. So if you can't be in a good starting position, we're going to work on stance and alignment first, because if we're not there, then we're going to get beat off the bat. It doesn't matter how physically gifted we are. So the kids, I try to tell them, we try to work through it, get in a good starting position, get the slack out of the bar, get your chest high. I'm not a big guy who say, hey, get your hips low, because the lower you get your hips, you're pushing them further away from the bar. And we're trying to keep everything close in relation to the bar. So to me, it's kind of like, hey, getting your best position. I'm very gray when it comes to a lot of lifts. Like there's no absolutes for me with anybody, like on squat, bench, deadlift, any of those things, because, everybody's, leverages are totally different. So your starting position is not going to be the same as mine. So we'll tell them, hey, get out there, get in a good position, pull the slack out of the bar. I'll tell them, hey, tuck your elbows in your back pocket. So just imagine you're bending it. That'll in turn, pull your scapula back. It'll get your chest higher. It pulls the slack out of the bar. It'll create more tension. And then I just tell them, hey, really drive away from the floor, because most people think of the deadlift as a pull. I try to tell them to think of it as a push. Like you're squatting with a bar in your hand. And another cue I got from Josh, I heard it from Brandon Lilly also, imagine you're jumping with the bar. So if I go to jump, my chest is going to stay high. If I go to just pull it, my chest is going to drop and my hips are going to rise too fast. But you got to find the connection to get them all moving at the same time. And so I think if you rush it, then I think that really, it puts you in a bad position. Then the bar does tend to drift out away from you because your lats aren't staying tight. You're not staying engaged. You're not staying focused and locked in, and you're just trying to rip the bar off the ground. That's why I'm, stretch reflex. That's why most people, if you can do it, and you're strong enough to do it, your second rep is usually better than your first, just because you have the stretch reflex. But also that third rep may not be as good because you're tend to rushing it, and now the bar is getting out away from you. So you're having to pull it not only up, but you're having to pull it back to you also. And then, kids, bars out in front of you, gets out on your toes. So it starts pulling you forward, and then, you get in a bad position, and that's where our injuries occur. But, I think and I tell them, hey, remember this cue, remember this. When you grab that bar, you got to forget it, and then you got to go. So
you said something in there, and this is probably something I'm having a little trouble getting kids to understand, and maybe you have some insight onto it. They all want to let slack go in their arms, so that when they do set their hips, all that tightness goes out through their shoulders because their arms don't stay rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that the elbows in the pocket helps? I mean, I can see where it would, but even then, trying to get them to understand that once your arms are fixed, they turn into a lever, and you're trying to pop the weight up.
Yes. The funny thing about that is I've been saying it, and you know how high school kids are. They're going to nod and say, yeah, yes, sir, and everything. They're just programmed into saying yes, sir, saying what's right. So I'd said it to a kid, and it was our kid that, had pulled 675. And I'd been saying it, and we get to the meet, and he actually did it. And he realized and he understood what I was talking about. And so he pulls it, ecstatic. It's probably about 12:30 that night. Or I guess next morning. He sends me a text, and he's like, Coach, elbows in the back pocket. It all registered today. He said, I never knew what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say anything? Well, I didn't know. I didn't want to sound stupid. No, you're never going to sound stupid. I say things, and I regurgitate them. I'll tell some kids, hey, bend the bar, grab it, sit. And I try to tell them when you're going down, you don't have to necessarily get your feet set, have your hands ready. They should be right outside your hips, your shoulders, and just squat down to the bar. You don't have to go down and look at it, because if I go down and look at it, everything's going to drop and tilt forward. Where your head goes, your body follows. So I just tell them, hey, squat down to it and then just feel for it, and then lock it in there, get everything tight. Get a good brace in your belly and push against that belt, and then just drive away. It's still a work in progress for us. Some kids still get it. Some don't get it. They think they get you'll see them, like you said, they'll get all the slack out. They'll turn it. And then when they go do the lift, they raise their hips, they drop them again, bar, elbows bend, and they just yank. And then they're wondering why everything, gets out of kilter. But, and that's what I tell our coaches too. Like, they're 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. They're going to mess it up. That's our job, is to, whenever you mess it up, to coach them and fix it and tell them when they're doing it right. If you're in the weight room and it's quiet, you ought to be hoarse when you leave the weight room if you got your music up loud, because the kids, they either need to hear what they're doing wrong or hear what they're doing right. They need to be told something every rep.
And that makes a lot of sense. And there's that line where you don't want to overcoach.
Yeah.
They got to find it. But then sometimes that little
And when they find it on their own, it's a beautiful sight, and they don't forget it.
No,
they don't forget it.
Yeah.
So speaking of the kid that the pull 675, he went on to play, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping off topic. But he went to Davidson. He's very, very intelligent young man. Went to Davidson, played linebacker there. When his strength coach took him to Summer Strong last year, he pulled 785. And he weighs 205, probably 6'2". If you look at him, you're like, wow, he's a very well put together young man. Now he's at Idaho State, and he squatted, I think, 735, 7:30, 7:35 at their Night of Champions. Now he makes me look, I know what I'm doing. So
I can relate to that so much. Yeah. Yes, you've got a few guys out there that just put it all together and they really make you look like you're a stellar coach. Now, do you use isometrics to help kids learn how to get into that good pulling position?
Yes. We will do some. Now I don't do it with a full group a lot of times. I'll take, because like I said, every kid and every group, they're different. So I tell everybody I write everything in pencil because something's going to change. Like mid workout, hey, I'm going to scrap that. That's not looking good for you. But we'll do pin pulls. Some people may call them something different. We'll get underneath it. We'll pull to the safety racks, and we may pull against that for 10 to 15 seconds, and then we'll jump from there and go straight to some speed pulls. We will do pause deadlifts at right below the knee or off the ground, because usually if they can get it to their knees, they're usually okay, and everything kind of falls back into place. That position from the floor to the knees, that's kind of tricky, so we'll pause there. And we'll do some ISO holds there. Kids don't like the ISO holds. For some reason, they start counting really fast when we do those. So, but to me, and I know we're going to talk about it later too, but like it really focuses you on keeping that back locked in.
Now, with what you're talking about there, I've adjusted our RDLs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever jacked with it or not, but essentially you turn it into a pause deadlift. So when you lower it down like you're going to do an RDL, then I just make them sit back in it like it's a deadlift, hold it, and then come up so they can feel that position. Have you tinkered with anything like that?
Yes, we have. I don't do it with a full large group just so I can get better eyes on it. And we'll have some kids that are, maybe I don't want to say a little bit more advanced, but they have a little more of a connection with the lift, and they tend to think about it a little bit more, so we can add those into it. But yeah, and it seemed to help us a whole lot, because you notice that if a kid, I try to tell them hey, my lockout sucks. My lockout sucks. It's not your lockout. It's your starting point. Usually it's not. Usually where the problem is not where, or usually where you see the problem is not where the technical problem is. Kind of like with injuries. Wherever you feel the pain, that's usually not where the injury occurred. So we'll do that, and then really focus on trying to keep that back locked in.
Yeah, you can't start bad and finish good.
No.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So in saying that, in the start, this is maybe where I struggle a little bit getting kids to understand. They're scared to get that bar against their shins and run up their shins. Or if they do, that bar will drift. And I had a bad problem with that too. It drifts, and every inch it drifts away from you, you're adding weight to the bar.
Yes.
How do you get them where they'll stay back in it and run that thing up their legs?
A couple things we've done. I put a lighter band against it, pulling to it, so they actually have to keep it pulled to them. And so now it kind of goes against what I was saying about pulling back and straight up and back, but it kind of keeps them, it feels there so they can feel it drifting away more. So they're more conscientious about keeping it tucked up against their shins. So, I mean, that's one thing we've done that's helped us a little bit. And then really just trying to, force through your heels. Just force through it. Keep your chest high. If your chest goes, the more you get on the ball of your feet, the more you're going to lose your upper back tightness, and the more the bar is going to drift out. And, so I just try to tell them, if it's comfortable, you're probably going to be wrong. Get in a good, uncomfortable position, because you're going to want to get out of that position. So you're going to want to get there to get it locked out quicker. So if you get in an uncomfortable position, and, the saying that came out a couple of years ago, get comfortable being uncomfortable. But if you'll get in an uncomfortable starting position, then usually the bar path just ends up taking care of itself. If you can get everybody's different, because I'll sit there when I go down over my deadlift, my knees will tend to shoot a little bit. So I can't get it quite as close as I want to, or as I'm telling someone else. And then I'll tell them, hey, turn your toes out just a tad. It'll open your hips up. It'll get your shins more vertical. And so that they can get their shins more vertical, usually that bar will tend to stay closer.
That little piece right there was what opened up, which I still don't pull big. I would never try to tell somebody I did, but that little piece there helped me more than anything.
Yeah.
If you can get those toes turned out, everything just opens. And especially with, it seems like females, that works incredibly well.
With females, the biggest thing I've noticed, toes out and focus on their breathing, and they breathe at the right time. And then they think you're a genius. They think it's amazing. We had it was our cross country group. It's probably about 4 years ago. we were in there, we were maxing out. They had tested, during the week, and we had a break, and I said, hey, I've got open weight room. Y'all want to come in? Y'all want to try to improve them? Less people, is a more personal environment. And so we're talking, so you can kind of walk them through things a little bit more. And then, they kind of learned, they braced better and controlled their breathing better. And their max from like a few days ago went up 30, 40 pounds, which did they really get 30 or 40 pounds stronger? No, they just happened to do it right this time or do it better. And so then, I mean, that right there is like just automatic buy-in with them. And they just thought the weight room was the best thing in the world. So, so it was pretty cool.
But it creates more buy-in, and then
Yes.
they're more locked in because now what can they do on another lift to do the same?
Oh, yeah.
Now, before I hop off deadlifts, because we've talked about them more than enough, but I did notice in that YouTube video that you had with Josh, his blocks those are genius, the way he just put the little risers of wood in there so those things don't roll out.
Yes.
It totally changed the way I seen how I'm going to have to do some blocks now.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they automatically want to, now I'm just speaking for me. A lot of people, they want to jump to automatically do rack pulls. To me, I do not get in the same position in rack pulls as I do a block pull. One, I don't know if it's because it's higher. I don't know if it's because I'm sitting. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too simple-minded, but doing the block pulls, and so far, knock on wood, we'll find out because I'm fixing to transition off the blocks in my training back to the floor. And whatever I've been able to pull off blocks, I can pull off the floor. And that was one thing for me is I'm good off the floor. I'm good out of the hole in squat. I'm really good off my chest and bench. It's the rest of the lift that gets me. And so we did that so I can start it. So it's almost like a dead bench or an Anderson squat per se for a squat, but it's for the deadlift. And so if I can get it to my shin right there in a still position and have to generate that force through the ground from right there, I tend to do better. And so it has a better transition and better carryover for my deadlift for me.
What I've found with athletes is we've actually kind of moved away from a pin pull. First of all, if you're not careful, you'll bend your bars, and that's a lot of money out there bent. But second, like you said, they get in a better position, and it seems like they learn their hips better.
Yes.
And then that would carry over to some other questions I have later on about some other sports. But yeah, the quicker they learn to bring them hips through, then the whole lift gets a lot easier, and they're not riding on their back or wherever with it. Now, do you use velocities or are you using percentages? How are you?
I use percentages.
Percentages?
Yes, sir. I use percentage. We don't have, I want to say hardly any. We don't have any really technology in our weight room. Now we do have some for running and stuff, but we don't in the weight room, which I wish we did. I just keep it. I'd like to say just my experience and just time under the bar, like, hey, it's this percentage for these reps. That bar's not moving fast enough. And I tell the kids, like, hey, move faster. And if I see it moving faster, I'm like, hey, why was it already not moving faster? And so we had a young lady that went to play at New Mexico State. She went on her visit. And I tell the kids all the time, like, hey, you may not like the weight room. You may not love the weight room. You got to respect the weight room because what it's going to do for you. And if you're an incoming freshman at a college, you're going to lift early in the morning. So you better start understanding it. And they had, velocity there and the Tendo and stuff. And so she's like, Coach, it made sense what you were talking about now. Like, hey, you got to move the bar faster because all theirs was on, bar speed. So, but no, I base ours off percentages.
I've ran it both ways, and we actually still run it both ways. We use velocity a little bit more on our dynamic days, and then we use percentages more on our max effort days. Okay, now you're a master lifter, so you've got a little age behind you.
A little bit.
And I'm right there with you, so that's where this question comes from. But as you age, learning to manage the volume and the recovery, you work out. You're in a weight room with kids all the time, and you almost can't lift them enough. They'll snap back,
Yes.
But here we are as older guys. When did it dawn on you? And maybe it hasn't. I don't know. Maybe you're still a volume guy. But when did you start figuring out that less was more?
Probably about 8 or 9 years ago. Maybe a little before, whenever my injury started kicking in. I was kind of self-taught. And then I started, when I became the strength coach here in Dayton, and started studying more people, here in Monty, don't burn the steaks, slow cook them. I'm like, if I'm doing that with these kids who are going to recover faster than me, why am I not doing that with myself? And if anyone's ever done any of Josh's training, you know that he's high volume. Used to, I would, and he does his, it's pretty much on a 4-day split. And I'm still on a 4-day split. But now it's going to take me 7 days to get those 4 workouts in. Because I don't recover like I used to. I realized that, hey, I've got to do a little bit more stretching. I can't just eat a Pop-Tart, throw down a scoop of pre-workout, go in there. All right, now I'm ready to go ahead and throw the weight on the bar. And I can't do that anymore. But yeah, it was probably really about 8 or 9 years ago when I really figured it out. And so now I'll tell Josh, and Josh is great. He'll be like, hey, if it takes 10 days, it takes 10 days. He said, don't rush it. But you see what happens, you're cooking a great meal, gourmet meal, and you rush it. Well, it's going to taste like crap. Doesn't matter how good the ingredients are. If you don't cook it right and don't take care of it, it's going to be crap. And so I noticed that, with my injuries, because not pushing back, not taking time, just trying to, hey, I got to get this workout in. I got to get it sent in to him by Saturday or whatever. And then I was like, no, he's okay with it. So why shouldn't I be okay with it? So I've tried to, try to eat better, try to up my hydration. I look in the mirror, I don't look the same. So if I'm not looking the same, the numbers and lifts aren't going to be the same. So, and now I just kind of, and also after my tricep tear, I kind of grew up a little bit too. And so I realized that, hey, powerlifting and competing is not paying your bills. So do it for fun and enjoy it. So now me and my family, we'll work out a lot together. And so it's kind of made it more enjoyable. And it's something that, like you try to tell the kids and you try to teach your athletes that, hey, this isn't just to get you through 4 years of high school to compete on the platform, to perform out there on the field or the court. It's just something that you can take with you for the rest of your life, and you can implement it to live a healthy lifestyle.
Well, there's a lot of questions in that whole thing that some of them I have wrote down, some of them I don't.
Yeah.
But this last go around, I worked with Peter Royo he kind of coached me through that last meet, and we found out kind of the hard way that I couldn't handle that volume anymore. My deadlift was through the roof one day, and then the next day I walked in.
Yes.
You can't do nothing. And so adding on to that, I guess you got to learn to trust another person to tell you what you're doing. You've got a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. You've been coaching kids. You've been lifting for a long time. How hard was that to let that go and be like, okay, Josh, whatever it is you want, we're going to do? Was there reserves in that, or were you just all in from the start?
Yeah, I think there would be, like with anybody, especially because you hate saying it. And I'm not saying we all walk around, cocky and arrogant, but like if you're a coach, you probably have some type of alpha in you. And so you kind of feel like you know what you're doing. Like with Josh, I never knew what a deload was before I got with him. And so I hope he doesn't listen to this part of it. But like whenever I was younger, and I didn't get with Josh until I was probably 2010. So, I was probably, 34? So I got started competing pretty late in my age. So I was probably around between 33, 34. And we would do a deload. It's every 4th week. I knew it was coming. So I would go in there, and on the deload week, I would max out on dumb stuff, like stuff that didn't pertain to powerlifting or what we were doing. Like I never really understood why in meet prep, why weren't we doing incline? Like I'm trying to get but like you don't lift, you don't do incline on the platform. And it doesn't carry over to your bench as much as you'd think it would. So during, deload weeks, I'd max out on overhead press. I'd max out on incline. I would do, like just tons of supersets and just be dumb. So anytime I get mad at our kids for doing dumb stuff, I'd get back and think about, hey, like you were 34 years old and you were being completely stupid. So yeah, it took a while. Now gauging off the main, like through weeks 1 through 3, I gave it to him. I was like, man, this is him. He's way smarter than I'll ever think about being. And I trusted him. We had a good friendship. I think of Josh as not only, my coach, but I think of him as one of my good friends. Anytime I have an issue or a problem, I can always reach out to him. Through any of my injuries, he's like, hey, look, when you're after recovery and things like that, just come on back and we'll pick back up. He did a lot of my rehab stuff with a few of my injuries too. I mean, he just catered everything around it. So I can't say I was not. I know we tell our athletes all the time, you're either all in or you're all out. So, I mean, I guess I was all out because I wasn't all in because like the deloads and times like that, I wasn't fully in. But as far as like during the meat and potatoes of it, I was, and I still am. And like now, as far as the deload, I'm texting him on like week 3. Hey, Josh, I've got a deload coming up next week, right? The deload's coming up. Used to, I would, deload. Who needs that? But now, I'm like, yeah, I need that.
I love his books. They're just straightforward the way they're wrote.
Yes.
The way he goes about things. He's not going to. Yeah. He's not going to.
He doesn't sugarcoat it, and he doesn't sugarcoat it with his athletes. Like, I'll say stuff. Like one time I was wanting to do some. I'm not going to do cardio, so I said, well, hey, can we do maybe some like tactical, some functional training for cardio, this and that? I said, yeah. And with Josh, it's either full board or no board. And so I was like, hey, can we kind of like gradually kind of do this? Like, I wanted to tinker with it. He said, well, if we're going to tinker with it, no sense doing it. I was like, okay, good point. It makes sense. Because like when I tell one of my athletes said, well, hey, I'm just going to go. I know you got 85% today, coach, but I'm just going to do 55. So it's kind of like, well, now the teacher becomes a student, right?
In saying that, how have all these ideas and the maturity and everything you've learned, how has that changed the way you're kind of coaching your athletes?
And I've said this to people before, like with the athletes, I kind of I call it the goulash method or the gumbo method. I take things that I've learned and studied from people that are all great ideas, but it may not completely work in our weight room and with the kids and the time and workload that we have. So I take things that I like from everybody and I try to put them together and make it, cohesive for what we've got and what we can do. I'll take a lot of Josh's stuff, like a ton of Josh's stuff. And then I'll take a lot of Jim Wendler's. I steal from Monty. I steal from Peter Noonan. I steal from John Mitchell. There's so many people that I steal stuff from. John Heck. There's so many guys that I try to go in there and steal things from and try to put it in there. And I feel like, I take because it's like your parents. It's like your boss. There's going to do a lot of things that you don't necessarily agree with. It's good and it works, but it doesn't work for you and for what you're doing. So I take some of those things out. And then like some of the things that I want to do that that Josh has me do, I'll have our kids do a variation of it because when I work out, it's just me, maybe my family, maybe another coach or somebody in the weight room with 20 racks. Well, tomorrow morning at 9:15, I'm going to have 70 guys in a weight room for 20 racks. So doing all that's not going to work. So I just got to find things that they've done and how lifts have evolved. And, there's always the new cool thing that everybody's doing and you'll see it. And I know you'll see it on social media. Like, hey, like you won't see people doing, single leg SSB squats. No, everybody's doing them. And then it'll go through a phase where they'll do that for a while. Then they'll come up and go something else. But you're not going to reinvent the wheel. You just got to put the wheel on there to make sure it fits and it works on your car. You can't put a 20-inch rim on an 18-inch tire.
You talking about that, going back and thinking about some of your social media posts. Looks like you do a buttload of Zerkers.
I do.
What led you down that path?
For our deadlift day, we always have how Josh has always done it for me. It'll either be speed squats, front squat, maybe some paused SSB squat, and then we've transitioned into the Zercher squat. So nothing, it's usually no more than 2 reps. It's usually, so like right now, I think I've got like 6 sets of 1. The weight's not just detrimental. Now I was feeling myself a few times and I was trying to, I want to try to put some decent amount of weight on the Zercher squat. What I really like about it is it sucks on the elbows. It feels great on my hips. It feels great on my knees. I really feel like it's keeping me to where I can keep my torso upright, my back and my lats locked in, and I really got to brace my core. So I've actually incorporated it into our kids' workouts. They hate it. None of them like it. They'll do the first set, and I haven't found the great rep range, the percentage range. We start off and, hey, we're going to start off 50%. we'll do 5 or 6 sets of one. Okay, hey, well, that moved well. So, hey, we're going to jump up now. We'll do doubles. I'll never probably go over 2 or 3 reps with it. Just because I don't want the kids to start missing on Thursdays because they know we got Zerchers. But some of the kids really like it. For some reason, I've started to really like it. Like I said, it sucks on the elbows. I came out the other day and I looked, and it happened to be my daughter. But the girls lifted, because the girls, they'll lift and then they'll do their sports specific training. Then the guys will come in and we'll lift. We do sports specific first, then we come in and do ours. And I looked over and I was trying to find, I have some towels that are usually on my desk. And I looked and I couldn't find them. I'm like, okay. So I walk out and I look by rack 1 and I see 2 of the towels sitting over there. And I was like, So I text my daughter later on and I was like, hey, what are these? She goes, sorry. And I was like, don't tell me you use those on Zercher squats. I did. She said the bar was pinching me. So I was like, okay, we got to get past that. And I told him, I said, and another thing, and I wish, I'm a brutally honest person. So like, I look at it like whatever lift or exercise that you're doing, what is your goal and what are you wanting to get out of it? Don't just do it because you did it 20 years ago. Give me the reason and the goal for it. And so, like we said, you're going to have to keep your lats locked in tight. You're going to have to brace better. It's going to take some load off the spine. And it's another way we can do those things. But at the end of the day, also, it's hard. And it sucks. Fourth quarter of a football game, it's going to suck. Fourth quarter of a basketball game, it's going to suck. If you're down by 3 and you're in the 5th set of a volleyball game, hey, it's going to suck. Okay, you got to find a way to fight, and you've got to find a way to reach down and go back to a time where, hey, this sucked, but I still got through it, and I'm okay. And so, like, sometimes in life, when that light bill's due and you just got laid off, it's going to suck. Are you going to be able to fight through it and fight through those hard times? And so that's another thing, like, and Keith, I say his name wrong every time, Keith Caton, or Catan, he's at Manville, another great strength coach. He, we're talking about power cleans when he spoke at the Cy Woods Clinic this past year. And he's talking about, catching the clean. He's like, at the end of the day, too, he said, it's hard. He said, it's hard. It sucks. He said, but they've got to get used to that sucking. He said, if you're in football, he said, you're going to take a lot of beating on your shoulders. You got to get used to that. So, that was a huge thing that I took from him, that like, hey, sometimes you just got to give them some things to do that are hard and that suck. And if you let them know that's why they're doing it, then they can appreciate it.
And that makes a lot of sense. You have to prepare for what you're getting ready to go do.
Yeah.
Now, in all this, we've talked about it in a roundabout ways, but I don't know how heavy you go with your kids. You run a powerlifting team, so obviously you go to maxes, but getting heavy enough to show the flaws. Those weak spots have to be corrected, and you've got to get to a weight that kind of magnifies that.
Yep.
So understanding that and kind of getting your kids there without getting them in a bad spot. How do you do that?
Oh, you're 100% right on that, because like everyone looks good doing doubles and singles at 50%. Hey, let's go. Let's get light. And I hate it. I've said it 1,000 times, and I hate it, though. It makes me cringe now. But like, hey, let's lighten the weight so we can work on technique. You really can't. You can work on speed, but you can't really work on technique. Because like you said, like it's once it gets heavy enough, that's when all the impurities are going to come out. I go out there and I'll sit there and A skip, B skip, all that, and I'm running in place and doing a light stride. Oh man, their form looks good. Well, let's see what it looks like whenever they're in an all-out sprint, busting max effort. Okay, now everything's getting out of kilter. Okay, so let's train at this one. I've found that the 80 to 90% range has tended to work really good for our kids. I also found that like in that range too, like your strength levels can just maximize too without even having to max out. Like we train in that range a lot even during season. And so I see that, hey, you got to get heavy enough. And you say, well, just do more reps. Well, you can't do more reps because now fatigue sets in. When fatigue sets in, that's when you're really going to get down. But if you're looking for technique on just that lift, you don't really need to be tired yet. That's for conditioning. Let's work on that later. But I say they got to go in the 80% range. And my thing is, and I tell our kids this all the time, we may do 10 sets of 3 at 80, 85% instead of 3 sets of 10 at 65 to 70%. 30 reps is still 30 reps, but I just did 30 reps at 80 to 85%. over doing 30 reps at 65, 70%. And so now I can see where that form breaks down. And now I can see that kid is maximizing that bar is going to move faster, because the third rep at 80% may move faster than that third rep at 70% if you're doing a set of 10, because they know they got 7 more reps after that. But if they know on that third rep, hey, this is my last one, I'm going. And so
it's a lot like sprinting and
yes.
conditioning. You've got your max velocity. You've got to get fast enough
yes.
to move the needle. You've got to get heavy enough to see the flaws. It kind of works out the same in my head.
No, I incorporate, or I try to use the analogy from speed and lifting, sprinting and lifting a lot, but with our guys, just because to me it is the same. It's still max effort.
Exemplifying what's right with strength training while not being arrogant. You got a huge total raw. There's not many guys walking around that have the strength that you've put up. How do you keep that modest and walk into the weight room and treat the athletes like they should be treated, and keep yourself humble?
One, I was them at one time. And you know what it's like, and I tell our kids all the time, like, hey, like, I really don't care what weight. I know this will sound weird, but I don't care what weight you have on the bar. I haven't ever gotten on to a kid for not being strong enough, because the thing about it is we try to work on technique and form and all that. But like, going back to what you're saying, I just don't think there's a place for it. I mean, whenever I was coming up, Josh, I reached out to him about, being my coach and this and that. At the time, Josh was a 600 plus bencher. He had squatted 1,000 pounds. He's deadlifted well over 800. And he sat down and talked to me just like I was a normal person, like I was anyone else. And at the end of the day, as a coach, it doesn't matter what you've done or what you can do. My days are over. It's what I can try to get these young men and young women to do, and how I can get them better. And no one's going to want to perform for somebody that is going to come in and sit there and, well, I did this, I did that, you're not good enough. No, treat them like you'd want to be treated, and, go from there. And like, I try to tell the kids all the time, like, hey, if you're spotting who's the most important person in the room, I said, that lifter is your most important and you're their most important. So if you treat everybody like they're important, I still think there's a place for it. I've got confidence and things like that, but I just don't think that we grew up. My grandmother raised me. I was raised by, my grandmother, my mom, and things like that. And so like how she taught me, I think it was just her guidance growing up, that tell me, you're not better than anybody else. You'll never be better than anybody else. There's always somebody out there that's better than you. Like I said, I went out there and at the time, whenever I did, another thing, it was a long time ago when I hit the 2000. And at that time, that was a really good total. But now, there's a lot of folks hitting 2000 now, it's like, wow, I'm about to knock the dust off of some of that stuff. But, I just think that like, you're never bigger than the sport or bigger than anyone else. And so, the kids will ask me, hey, what do you do, coach? And I'm like, well, right now I do this, but it's not what I've done. It's what I can get them to do. So
you say a lot of folks hitting it, but in the grand scheme of things and the percentage of people that are out there, it's a pretty small number.
It is. I was blessed. I was good at 3 things at that time in my life: squat, bench, and deadlift. I wasn't good at much else.
You got to find where your niche is.
Yeah.
I know I had listened to some stuff and they had talked about it, like when your guys walk out in public or your guys go on a football trip or whatever, they know your guys. They have a look. And I'm sure the females too. I don't mean to just say guys, but your weight room's creating a certain look of athlete. That's one of the utmost compliments, I guess, as a strength coach you can get, when you can identify Whitehead's athletes when they get off the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was, I tell you, one time, I was actually competing in a meet. It was in New Caney, Texas. And, I was sitting there, we were back there warming up. And, I think probably about 4 or 5 of our players walked in to come watch, and they surprised me. I'm sitting there. I'm an emotional person. And so I look over there, I'm tearing up and all this and that, because, they took their Saturday to come over there and watch the old man try to get after it or whatever. But they walked in and they didn't walk over to us, whatever. They walked in, and a couple of the guys, they were like, hey, are those your athletes? I'm like, yeah, do you remember them from like some of my videos and this and that? And they were like, no, like we can tell by their traps in their back. Wow. Okay, good. I said, we're doing something then. We're doing something. And we really, 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 and I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter if I'm here, whoever else was here, our kids are going to work their tails off. We're a blue collar community. The kids, we don't have a lot here, but the kids work. They really work. They get around all my crap and my BS. And so they overcome all my shortcomings, but they come in and they really work their tails off, and they buy into what we're doing. And I try to tell them all the time, hey, we're going to work the muscles we can't see. I've seen guys with big chests, big arms, big legs that were weak as all get out. But I've never seen someone with a big back that was weak. So we're gonna work our back. We're gonna work our back. I said, it's gonna keep you healthy. Every sport we do, you've got to stop. Well, the backside's gonna help you do that. You're throwing your baseball, you're throwing your football, you're serving, all those things. So we're gonna do that. So no, that is a huge compliment to when I hear, hey, those guys are from Dayton, I can tell by how they look. So that's a huge compliment. Yes.
You said something in there and it just triggered an old memory. But when I was young, getting ready to get married, all those things, my dad said, look at her room, eat her food, and look at her mom, because that's what you're going to have. And if you're okay with those three things, then you're set. And I always thought with my daughters, that same question kind of applied a little bit, but I always thought of look at his back and look at his hands. And that'll tell you what you got. And, developing that back and how important that is just in daily life, let alone as an athlete.
Yes. And like a lot of times, like with our softball team, like, hey, y'all got 100 reps of band pull aparts at the end of every workout. I said, we sit like this all day on our phone at our desk. I said, we've got to get right. And I said, and it involves everything you do. I mean, how many times has someone, tweaked their back? He couldn't do anything for a week or two. And, it's kind of like the old, Louis saying, weak things don't break. I'd like to say, I know I didn't, but I'd like to say I coined it with Josh years ago. But I know how much your back helps your bench press. And so, and when we first started, I liked to bench press. I liked it. And then when I squatted, I would tend to pitch real bad. Well, if I get my back stronger, even if I pitch, I can still get through it. And deadlift, I tell our kids, do as I say, not as I do on deadlift, because my deadlift form is not great. But I do know if my back is stronger, my deadlift is going to go up too. So I said, well, is there a way we can work back every day? And he goes, yeah. And then I hear Dave Tate talking about you just working in different planes. You got your vertical pull and your horizontal pulls. And so if you do that and you do it smart, then you can work it every day. And then like I've had days, I've muscled out a deadlift that I probably shouldn't have. And I got it. And everybody's like, hey, is your back hurt? Is your back hurt? Like they say, no, my back feels fine. Like knock on wood, like all through my years of powerlifting and things, I've never had back issues. Now my knees and my hips may be a different story, but my back's always been fine. And I like to think that's because Josh has put back in every workout. And so I've tried to put that into our kids, in our plan also. And it's going to be some type of back. Like right now, as soon as we finish our squats or front squats, we go straight into a plate bent over row. And I tell the kids like, hey, it's only a set of 6, but you're doing, say we got 5 sets of 6 on squat, 5 sets of 6 on when we do superset with our bench. Okay, that's 30 extra reps of back we're getting in that I don't even really have to program in to set aside for another lift. And I said, so that's just extra work that you're getting. So, and they've got into it. So then you'll go around there flexing their back. A little side note, we were in the pool yesterday, and my oldest daughter, I still write her workouts up for her. And she graduated 2 years ago. And she was getting on the float and doing something. And then I was like, hey, I said, your traps and erectors are really starting to stick out. She's like, oh, really? So she was all excited about that. So it's like, we don't give compliments about, nails and things like that. It's about your spinal erectors and traps now.
And they love it, right? I mean,
they
want to look good in a dress, and it's getting that time of year that they swimsuits, all that stuff. It matters to them just as much as it does the boys.
Yes.
Which I was going to ask you that. You have 3 girls, and this is a little bit off topic. So you grew up, or you didn't grow up. You've lived most of your life in a house full of women. Mm-hmm. I've got 2 daughters, a wife. I've done the same thing, and I found that you can live with them and still not know anything about the female world. Have you learned 100%. Anything, or are you still struggling?
Oh, it's something new every day. It's something new every day with us. Like, yeah, I'm totally oblivious and I'm totally lost all the time. So, and they let me know that I'm lost too.
Well, thankfully, yes, my wife and daughters have stepped in on some stuff in the gym and been like, their shirts need to be different. This needs to be set up different. It's
yes,
you got to understand what they're thinking when they come in and do these things. It's not they do care. So
yes,
yeah, without that coaching, I'd really be in trouble.
no, 100%. That's like we communicate through Sports You through our powerlifting group and most of our groups, whatever. And so, like, if there's ever a touchy subject, like, hey, I don't mind saying it, but like, hey, you got to wear sports bras when we do our bench start. Just make sure you have your sports bra that day and all that. So I'll tell my daughters, hey, I'll send out a post in Sports You reminding all the girls that we're working bench search tomorrow. So make sure they bring the proper attire. I said, it's going to look, it may not, but it could look a little awkward or weird coming from me. I said, so, because like some people, like some parents are in the Sports U too, so they don't really know, like, why is this male telling my daughter to wear a sports bra tomorrow? So I do that to try to cut it down a little bit. So I said, if there's any uncomfortable conversations that you think that may need to be had, I need y'all to have them with the girls. Okay. So and it's worked out pretty good. And luckily I've had, like I said, my oldest daughter, she graduated 2 years ago. She powerlifted for me for 4 years. And then I had my middle daughter, she graduated this year. She powerlifted for 4 years. And then I've got a daughter that's going to be a junior. And so far she's powerlifted 2 years. And so I've got her for 2 more. And then hopefully one of our coaches, they'll have a daughter come along so I can have that. But then, and all their friends, they're always over at the house. And so I've got a good relationship with all of them. So it kind of goes off pretty easy.
Yeah. Mine are far enough out of school now that those girls that I kind of knew and that would really benefit from the gym, they're all graduated and starting to get married and living their lives, Now, the one thing I know from Josh, listening to him talk and reading some of his books, and I don't want it to be all about Josh, it's about you and what your school's doing, but I've heard you talk about it a little bit as well. So how do you bring this back to your athletes? But the mentality, staying up, the visualization, all the things that go into being successful, starting the mind, how are you able to kind of navigate that?
Well, and like Josh, he's huge on like speaking it into existence and talking about it. I mean, he would tell me like, there's a lot of affirmations we do each day. Like, hey, 100 times today, you need to say this. I will bench press 550 pounds or whatever it was. He said, just keep speaking it in there. He said, and don't put any negative thoughts in your mind. He said, because that will bring it down. And so like with the kids in the weight room, I don't let them speak negative. Well, I don't know if you're going to get this, I just try to tell them, that can't be any part of your mindset. I just tell them, if you plant a seed of doubt, it grows wild. So that we're not going to plant it. And I tell them like, you've done this, you've done it before. It may just be, and then a little thing that I stole this from one of our athletes one time. It was actually the kid that got me started powerlifting, but they'll look at the bar and they're always looking on the outside of the bar. I said, look, the bar is just like a person. Look what's on the inside of it. So if I look down at, if I've got 700 pounds stacked on the outside of the bar, if I look down at the inside of the bar where I'm going to grab it, it's just the bar. If I take all that weight off the bar and I look down where I'm going to grab it, it's still that same bar. So I just tell them, like, look what's on the inside. Don't look what's on the outside. If you get caught up in that, like with anybody else, you can't judge a book by its cover. So just go on what's inside. Don't go what's outside. Not saying that you can lift 700 pounds at any time, but, some of them are like, so if I put 700 on there, I can get it. No, let's don't do that. But
the mind's the first thing to go, especially in rep.
100%.
Once you think you're there, you're not going to go past it.
100%. Yeah. Like, cause kids, I can tell whenever they're doing it, like when we're maxing out, we're doing a lift, or like we got a high percentage on the bar, and like they start taking a bunch of different attempts, or they start walking around looking back over their shoulder and second guess. And sometimes I'll tell them, hey, look, save it for another day. Today's not the day. Save it for another day. No, coach, I think I can get it. I was like, you can't think you can get it. You got to know you can get it. I said, so we got to save that for another day, and we know we can get it. So
now we'll start bringing this thing around. I know it's hot there, and you've been on here quite a while. We got started a little early, so just a few more questions on a few different things you're doing, and I know I'm leaving tons on the table, but
you're fine, man.
So harnessing that inner strength. I heard you talk about that. You did a YouTube video on squats, and you were going through 6 highlights of squats, I believe. And you kind of at the end of that, you started talking about harnessing your inner anger, or I think that's what you said. But essentially, that inner strength and getting it to the bar. I've probably struggled with that more than anything. It's very hard for me to find that arousal and find that. I'll never be a great lifter because I don't have that. You've obviously found it. How do you bring that back to your athletes and kind of help them find that switch?
Man, it's tough. I think it all goes back to and it's probably what takes the longest, because I think you got to have a connection with them and a relationship with them, so you can find what really drives them, what motivates them, and what can get that out of them. So I don't think there's a cookie cutter just answer for it. And I know that sucks, and I apologize for that. But I think like each kid, each athlete you have, you've got to find what gets them going. And I know, I mean, I'm fortunate that Dayton is a small school, and that, I'm not dealing with the same amount of numbers that a lot of other people are having to deal with. And I've been here for a long time. I've known these kids for a long time. So I think that really helps, that I can find each kid. I know there's kids I'm missing. So I don't mean to put it that way, or so I'm not, the sensei or anything, but that, like, I think you got to have a relationship with them. When I first started coaching, I was horrible about that. I was like, they don't need to like me. I'm their coach. They're going to do it this way. I'm not changing for them. They can adapt to me, blah, blah, blah. That lasted probably 3 years. And I loved coaching. I was young enough to where I could still get a relationship with the kids, but I wasn't doing it the right way. It was very superficial. So as that changed, I was like, all right, they don't necessarily have to be your friend or like you. They have to respect you first and respect what you're doing. And they're not going to respect you until you open up to them. And then once you open up to them and they respect you, then y'all can create a bond. And it may be they like you, but to me, they're respecting you over liking you is the fact that, hey, you can be joking around and kidding 1 minute, and then that next minute, when it's time to turn it off and get to work and get busy, then you've got that. But you got to have that relationship with them, because you got to be able to get onto them, and you got to be able to hug them up. And like I'll tell our kids, like, I'm the first one to get on somebody's rear end. But I also feel like I'm going to be one of the first ones that's going to hug them and, tell them how much I love them and care about them too. And I think they've got to understand that and feel that before they can open up to you, and that they've got to be able to open up to you before you can find is what's going to challenge and harness that inner anger so they can lift angry. Shout out to 8-Man. No. But I think that's the answer for that. There it has been for me. So.
Well, that sets up this last question and almost perfectly, but it probably took me way too long to figure this out. And I think it was a podcast that you were on that you kind of touched on it briefly. And I thought, man, that's right down to where I've kind of ended up in my life. But kids are the commodity, and without them, we don't have these jobs. We're not doing anything. We're just living life. So appreciating the kid for the kid, and not that you're going to let them know they're the commodity, but in the back of your mind, that's your job.
100%.
When did that click and all that kind of start making sense to you?
Like I said, probably my third year of coaching. I was fortunate, and a lot of people won't see it this way, but I was fortunate. I coached at the junior high for probably 7 years. And with doing that, you learn a lot of stuff. You learn a lot of bit about kids. I think you really learn how to coach there, because they are a true piece of clay and they don't know anything. Like, I spent majority of my days opening up kids' combination locks. So I think that was it. And I realized that, hey, and then, like I said, Dayton's a small town. We're a poor town. And so I had kids from the school spent more time in my vehicle than my own kids probably did. So taking them home, seeing what they go home to, seeing what they don't go home to, hearing their conversations on the way home, knowing that a lot of them, I grew up the same way, and knew that it was my coaches and my family, some of my family and my friends, that are what pulled me out and helped me be somewhat successful, or what I am. Not perfect by any means, but it was my football coaches, my teammates, and a lot of my friends that showed me how life was really supposed to be. And so, once I saw that, like, hey, I'm taking these kids home, and like, they've got windows busted out of the house. They've got just one window unit. There's holes in the floor. You go in there, you knock on the door and the door falls over. I mean, so you kind of put things in a perspective that, like, hey, these kids need you, but you need these kids also. And so we may be the only, we preach consistency all the time, but we could be the only consistent things that these kids have. So, we've got to be there each day. And I try to, you're going to have bad days, but I try to tell like young coaches and things like that, like we're not really allowed to have bad days with these kids. So, kind of give them everything that you've got every moment that you can. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones taking care of us when we can't take care of ourselves. So we better put out a good product. But no, that's that, and so, just you gotta develop relationships with them. Let them know you care about them. It's okay. Like you can still be a tough person for them to look at and look up to and know that they can depend on you, but you can also know that you're vulnerable too. And so they got to see that, because kids are going to see through muddy water. I mean, they know the truth. Don't ever try to lie to them either. They know you they know what you're doing better than you know what you're doing. So you better go ahead and be honest with them, or they're going to call you on your BS too. So
there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, some of the best times in the gym are probably the after lift conversations with just a couple.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I spent 1 year, and I know we got to get off here, but 1 year it was pretty cool. It was a Friday day. It was a Valentine's Day. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was Valentine's Day. It was a Friday night. And I look up and it's 7:30. We're still in the weight room. It's me, Coach Little, and about 3 or 4 other guys. I said, guys, y'all got girlfriends, don't you? Yes, sir. I said, he's got a wife and I got a wife. I said, I'm okay, because I'm not going to be in trouble. I said, but y'all probably need to be with them, don't you think? And they were like, man, Coach, it's just fun. And so like we'd sit up there and we'd do that. Like we'll have some kids, they ask me about lifting on Sundays. Hey, I do my workout on Sunday. That back door is unlocked. You want to come up and lift? Come up and lift. But a lot of times it ends up to just a big BS session too. So it sounds good and all that, but it's a big BS session. And I like to see what they've learned and what they can put together, because I won't write them anything up on Sundays. Because I want to see, one, if I do, I'm going to coach them. I don't want to coach them on Sunday. And so, like, kind of see what they can put together. Like, hey, this is what we're doing on Monday and Tuesday. Don't let Sunday interfere with Monday and Tuesday. And y'all go out there and have fun and do what you want to do. And, sometimes I've had kids that have done a full-fledged workout, and I've had kids that did one set, and the rest of the time we sat there and just BS. So it is what it is. And as long as they like being in this room, then I'm all for it.
That's the deal. I got kids I think would live out there if I would let them. And it's, for whatever reason, it's safer than where they got to be, or they enjoy
100%
other places. Well, man, I kept you on probably longer than you intended to.
No, I've got them. I'm good, brother.
I had just a great time researching all of your stuff, and I knew it was going to be a good podcast. So that you would schedule this so quick and sit down and do this, man, I am appreciative.
No, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you. And I'd like to, give out, like I said before we started, I hate, doing this, making lists, but, I can't thank Josh Bryan enough, for everything he's taught me. Jim Wendler, like I said, we talked about earlier, I stole a lot of stuff from him. Strength coaches in the game, like Doug Bull, he's a big name around these parts. They got strength conditioning in this area going. No one can, do as much as what Monty Sparkman's doing for the strength conditioning world now. As much stuff as he puts out there, as much stuff as he gets going, he's just a true advocate for powerlifting. I mean, not just powerlifting, but like for strength conditioning, period. Hell, I go to him to ask him about cleans and stuff. No one would ever, think that, but he does such a good job teaching it, loves the community so much. Peter Noonan, he does the speed and strength chat that he talks about on Sundays. And he is awesome. Keith Catan or Caton. I say it wrong every time, Keith, and I apologize. I mean, we just go back and forth all the time. Red Brock. I mean, I could keep going on and on. But all those people have really, really helped me through my journey. And I just want to let them know how much I appreciate them. So.
Well, them are some great people that you named off. I've been fortunate enough to become friends with some of them and have some of them on the show, and it just turned into some incredible relationships that you can. If you got a question, and you can get a hold of one of those guys, and they're going to give you an answer. Yeah. So I know it's a Sunday. I know it's a Sunday morning, man. You probably got your lift coming up, but like I said earlier, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and doing this show.
Well, I really appreciate it, man. Like I said, I'm humbled that you asked me. Totally not worthy of it, but I appreciate every minute of it, man.
Well, good deal, man. You always want guys to have a good time. Otherwise, they'll quit coming on. Well, Coach, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
All right, brother. You too.
All right, man.
Take care now.